I think Paramahansa Yoganandaji was the first person who wrote about his life in the autobiography of the yogi. Nothing much was known earlier. And Lari Maharaj's family, mainly his son and grandson, they were also masters in their own right, yes. But nothing is talked about them. Kinkori Lari and Shivcharan Lari, so they both were great masters.
Yes. Yeah, the hearing did not put out much publicity, one might say. He didn't take his teachings very public, nor did most of his disciples. And so it was really later on when Master wrote about him, almost, I don't know, it was almost 100 years after at least 80 years after the meeting between Lahiri and Babaji, before the knowledge of that meeting became very widely known to the world, and only with the, it was just a divine play. I think, I see it as there being kind of phases or waves of energy that's being released. I think that it was Lahiri's job to teach the people of India and release that to great masters, but not to have a world mission in the sense that Master had a world mission where he was widely known. And he would even tell people that not to talk about him, and he would have people come separately in order to come to Gita assemblies. So he kept it purposely non-public, and that has more or less followed along. But it was Master's mission to make the yoga teachings and this line of gurus very public. And so he published one of the most popular books in the world. Certainly spiritually, autobiography is probably outsold any other spiritual autobiography that's ever been written. So it was just the divine playing in different ways through that. But for whatever the reasons, we're here because of that drama that the divine played.
It's interesting too that not every great soul has a world mission or is recognized. When Swamiji went to India, this was in the 1950s, he visited the disciple of Ramana Maharshi, Yogi Rama, he was called, and Swami felt he was just a great saint, very little known. And Swami asked him, he said, you have so much to give on a spiritual level. Why don't you have a more public work? And this Yogi Rama said, God has played through me the way he wants to. That's sufficient. So we see all different aspects of, some have a public work, some have a public work that maybe have less to give. Some don't have a public work that maybe have a tremendous amount to give. But it's just the way God plays. But there's a wonderful story, maybe you will tell, of Lahiri's
Yeah, there's some interesting stories with Lahiri, but speaking of how little well-known he was, he had a nephew in his own family who was suffering from a stomach disease. And this nephew went to many doctors and finally went to a doctor who was also a spiritual teacher. And this doctor said, this malady that you have is spiritual. It won't be healed by physical means. You have to find a great saint and go to that saint, and that saint will heal you. And so the nephew began asking around, and he heard of someone, I think he lived in Kashmir, I'm not quite sure, was planning to make this visit, and someone, his uncle or someone in the family, heard that he was doing this, said, why are you going all that way when an even greater saint is your own uncle? Lahiri Mahashaya. And so this nephew didn't even know. And he went and Lahiri healed him. But Devi was referring to a story that happened. It was interesting, a little bit of a strange story. Lahiri had 2 sons, but he also had 3 daughters. And so one of the daughters was married, living in the household of her husband, and she became very seriously ill. And so they were worried about her being able to survive, and her health was going down and down. And Lahiri's wife came to Lahiri and said, "You've healed so many people. Can't you do something for your own daughter?" And Lahiri said, "Well, take this particular nut, I'm not sure what kind of nut it was," said, "grind it up into a powder, combine it with a little oil, and then give it to our daughter, and she will be well." And so Lahiri's wife went to the household, but the household thought it was just superstition. They were wedded to Western medicine, and the wife didn't feel that she could intrude upon that choice of the family, and so she didn't give this medicine to her, and the daughter died. And so the next day, after the daughter had died, the disciples of Lahiri came, and in that evening he was about to begin his regular Gita discourses. And they said, "Master, how can you give a discourse on the very day that your daughter has died?" And he said, "Well, I just feel to go on and give this discourse." And they were trying to say, "Oh, you don't have to do it." He said, "No, I feel to do it." And then they said, "Well, we ourselves won't be able to be attentive to it." And he said, "Well, then that's fine, then I won't give one this evening." So as the disciples were leaving, one of them turned and he said, "I don't understand. Here we're so upset that we can't listen to a discourse, but you don't seem to be upset. Do you not care about your daughter?" And he said, "Let me explain it this way. I have received a much heavier blow than any of you, but your minds are like soft clay. And so if you place a tablet, a slab of marble on soft clay and you hit it, that marble leaves the impression in the clay. My mind has become like marble. And so you lay marble on that, you hit it with even a heavier blow, and it doesn't leave an impression on your mind in the same way." And so he was basically saying that I have withdrawn my likes and dislikes from seeing that this world, even that this world is real. Because ultimately, the world isn't real. You know, Lahiri said, among other teachings, he said Kriya Yoga is the solution for every problem. When I heard that, I thought, that's a little bit naive. You know, if you have, I don't know, a financial problem and you've lost your job, you're supposed to go and do a few kriyas and that will fix your bank account. This was early on in my I've come to my senses since that time, but I was thinking in that way. And yet, it's all according to our state of consciousness that we draw what happens to us. Last night, I had a dream. I've been having difficulty with my phone. The bill didn't get paid, and I couldn't get service, and so on. So I was trying to look at the mapping thing, and it wasn't working. So that had remained in my mind. Last night I had this strange dream where I was driving a car and I was trying to look at the mapping program and it was all strange. And so I got completely lost. And I was out in the middle of the woods driving on this little dirt road and there was some, kind of woodsy kind of person who thought I was trespassing and was shooting a gun at the car. So, so here, coming back to Kriya Yoga is the solution to everything. So in the dream, I drove away and I was safe. But suppose that I had to somehow battle this kind of semi-crazy person, and all the troubles and all the difficulties of fighting my way through that, and finally I would win or I would lose. What's the solution to a dream? A dream of difficulties or problems. What's the solution? Wake up. The dream goes boom. It's not there anymore. We have this dream in this life of losing a job or having financial difficulty. Lahiri says you can't ever solve all of those dream problems. Never will you. That's the nature of this world. This dream has always got its ups and downs. He said, if you want to solve all of those problems, the solution to everything is Kriya Yoga. Wake up. Wake up out of the dream, because you'll never solve all the problems if you stay asleep in the dream. And so, understanding more deeply, I understand what Lahiri was really saying. But to the person who's wedded to the dream, for someone to say, do Kriya Yoga and everything will be fine, sounds like it's a crazy, one of those yogi kind of guys who doesn't really know that how to function in this world. Anyway, other questions?